Okay, let's have a look at what we have for this week. This is week 9, so we're going to start with looking at the trees in trouble. And the first task we are facing today, the first part was referring to list of headings. So you're going to see that over to the left, where they often provide a different list with a long list of possible headings that might seem to be quite a fit or might be a proper fit for the paragraph. Okay, and some of them might be very similar, while the correct one could just be like 1 or 2 words apart from the imposters. Okay, so if we were to choose about the proper answers, sometimes we need to distinguish between a very similar two. Okay, so let's just have a first look about this part. On the first page, we have usually setting as the list of headings. We need to choose from this general list. And then we have 7 different paragraphs to match. But if we were to look for the options we have at hand, we are seeing from number 1 to number 10. Okay, so there are 10 of them, but we only have 7 to the maximum of the question. So when we try to figure out the answers, there are the extra, which might seem to be blurred and poster. Well, usually if we were to describe as imposters were like answers that could be a role player, that something often try to gain our attention, but they are not the correct answer. So we have to be very careful for those imposters might appear in certain way. Okay, so be careful with the imposters. They might look very similar to each other, and then so attention must be paid at this moment. Now, the second set of questions, apart from list of heading for these trees in trouble, were to refer to the contents of sentence completion. Now, sentence completion usually range about a given limited numbers of words. So they would say about this like no more than 2 words. Okay, so when we do the sentence completion, it's quite straightforward that we need to fill in accordingly. So which means we will be given, for example, we will be given the previous part of the sentence, but we need to try finding the rest of the bits, the missing parts that are being taken away or that have been removed from the sentence. Okay, so like the one we have over here, we've got this one, found in something missing because of something missing. The release of something from dead trees. Strong, for question 11, strong something are capable of damaging tall trees. Number 12 is right from the beginning. It says something has a worse impact. Whereas number 13, it talks about in West North America, a species of something. Now, if we were to look for these type of questions from the very beginning, when we look for the ideas, what kind of question would that be? So they say this is a sentence. And so we also need to pay attention to the limit of words. After that, we have to examine the question. By saying examine the questions, is that we need to find out exactly what is our first assumption for these possible answers. Now, if we were to look at each one of them, the first one we have that might be gaining our attention is when we try to examine question A, they say the biggest trees in the world can be found in. So the moment we realize that they say trees, the biggest, which is the superlatives, right? Be found in certain place. So we knew it's going to be a noun, and that is a great chance of having this as a location. Okay, now if we were to go to question 2, some trees in northern Australia die because of something made worse by gamba grass. So look at the questions. We knew that because of something, like a situation. Okay, so it could also be assumed as a noun, although we might not necessarily knew that this is a plural form or a singular form. Okay, now if we're going for question 10, the Clarks, that was referring to the scientist and researcher's name. So the Clarks is definitely the locating words, which we will explain later, right? Now, get back to where we were. The Clarks believe that the release of, now when we spotted the word of, again, it's going to testify it as a noun. Release usually comes with certain kind of, for example, it could be a kind of, for example, gas, something, for example, liquid, for example, gassy. So then we can say the release of something from the dead tree. Okay, so might be a kind of substance in the air. Okay, although we don't know how it might works out, but then we'll see it later. Now, question 11 was referring to strong as an adjective. Now, strong something are, so that it would be very easy for us to identify because they say are capable of damaging tall trees in the Amazon. Okay, so we are assuming that's going to be plural now. Question 12, it's a beginning of a sentence. So it says, has a worse impact. Now, we literally see that it was using has, H-A-S. So again, quickly try to fumble around and say this might be a likely noun, right? So a singular noun. It might be a kind of phenomena. So something has a worse impact on tall trees than smaller ones. So we'll see how it goes between tall trees and smaller trees. 13, a species of, again, it's going to be a noun. And we don't really know if it is going to be plural forms or singular forms. So we'll leave it in this way. So in short, when we do sentence completion, examine question first. Try to picture and envisage what might be the likely answer. As I had said previously, because this is week 9, we've been through the previous 8 different weeks. When we go for sentence completion, table completion, notes completion, summary, there are 80% of the chance the answers could be the first noun, the second adjective, the third verb. So try to look for these 3. These are critical answers where we can mesmerize ourselves and we can assume or we can form a pre-assumption about the possible answers. We narrow it down to a certain range. We'll see how it goes later when we finish the first part. Now, let's just go for the trees in trouble. If we were to deal with these type of questions, list of headings, let's just change the view into single page view. There's no repetition. So each one of those answers will be only used for once, right? So when we have the list of headings, we knew it's always more than the necessary. Okay, so then we have to choose just from 1 to 7, and then they literally have 10. So there are 3 would be the extra. Okay. We have to eliminate the unnecessary 3. So we'll see how it goes, although they might look very similar. Okay, so extra attention must be paid at this moment. Right, so we'll start straight away. Save more time. This is very critical. Now, if we were to read for the trees in trouble, there are I'm not thinking about doing too many paragraphs at a time, but I was saying if you could, please proceed with your own speed. Okay, so the first part we're going to do is to focus on paragraph A. And if we have the additional time, we shall look for paragraph B as well as C. Okay, now, if we were to start from here, the subtitle provide us a critical information. So they say, what is causing the decline of the world's giant forests? Okay, so we're thinking about going into the woods and to discover the real answers, why those tall trees disappear. First part. Now, usually when we do these kind of questions, we have certain things to propose, right? Go through it quick and fast. Now, when we try to do these type of questions, we literally had to read for the gist, right? It's not like we read every single bit and remember all the details. It's not necessary to remember all the details at this part. We only need to read for the gist. We want to figure out what this part of paragraph that the writer wants to convey at this point. Okay, so the first is that if you are doing general training, it's the same thing, okay? You will have to go through matching headings when you sit for the general training IELTS test. Now, if we were to look at this one, the first is that if you don't want to do it as a match heading, you could do it later. But what I would like to propose is to do it straight away because that will enhance your understanding to this particular article. And so shorten the time you need in the second set of the question. Okay, so we do it first today. Find the gist and then analyze the questions given all of those likely options we have when we finish the general rating about this part. And number 5 is rather important. Sometimes when we see the answers that look very similar or use exactly the same word as we have read in the paragraph, and we think that we got the right answer, most likely it does not necessarily explain to us that giving something weak or something related or exactly the same word proves it to be the correct answer. It would be not in that case. We have to look for the details. Some of those details, some of those words could be paraphrase, synonyms, antonyms, or highly relevant words. Okay, by doing so, now also look at question 6. When we do it, usually teachers will say, read for the introduction sentence, which is the topic sentence, or sometimes we say the thesis statement, as well as the concluding sentences to see if there is any quick information that we could get. Okay, so look for the introduction sentences as well as the concluding sentences. But this kind of way might prove to be very efficient for the IELTS beginner. Okay, this will prove to be efficient for beginner, but when we try to get more of our score, for example, I need to reach 6.5, 7, 7.5, then looking into the introduction sentences and the concluding sentences will not prove to be efficient enough. Why? Because they are tricky points. Now, these type of tricky points, if we try to look further, what could they look like? They are seemingly the first one. If they provide you with logics, we need to be very careful with the following words. Also, furthermore, in addition, what is more? Because usually they try to tell us as an example. So they provide reference to our answers. Now, number 2, they say the most, the biggest. If they try to talk about the superlative, usually they try to prepare us for a comparison. Okay, so that could be seen that in this particular paragraph, they are trying to they're trying to compare two things or maybe three things together. So we knew that this paragraph is about comparison. Number 3, talk about in fact, in essence, in particular, because they try to give a pavement to the further important information. So they say it this way. For example, oh, I like your outfit today. In fact, I particularly enjoy that pair of shoes you wear today. So in fact, it was to tell more about deeper information. Number 4 of the type, first, next, later. So usually if they say about this one, they're talking about process. They're talking about stages for doing something. Number 5, similarly, put another way, what is, or in other words. They try to tell us what the writer wants to say and to explain to us. Now, if we're moving on to number 6, which is the important part, if they talk about however, although, but, not just A, but also B, that usually refer to the ideas where writer's opinion changed at this point. So these are rather important. When we look for these type of information, please pay attention to whatever they say with the transitional words. Right. If we were to get to the part down here, screenshots are in the meeting chat. Feel free to download. So we're just going to get back to the first part. The second, if we have additional time, right? Now, if we were to mention about the number 1, paragraph A, look for words that are meaningful. So say, bigger trees are incredibly important ecologically. For a start, they sustain countless other species. They provide shelter for any animals, and their trunks and branches can become gardens, hung up with grain farms, orchid and bromeliads, coated with mosses and dropped with vines. And then say this allowed them to produce massive crops of fruit, flowers, and foliage that sustained much of the animal life in the forest. So if we were to look at the first sentences, big trees are important ecologically because they sustained countless other species, which is the same, again, sustained the animal life in the forest. If we were to look for any further information, they say provide shelter and draped with vines where their tall canopies basking in sun, they capture vast amount of energy allowed to produce. Okay, good. So these were the information. Tall trees are important ecologically because they sustained countless other species. Reiterate again, they provide shelter. So try to see for the concluding sentence, sustained animal life, which are the important parts. Now, if we're moving on to paragraph B, only a small number of trees have the genetic capacity to grow really big. Okay, so now we are going to talk about the really big trees and those tree species. The mightiest means the tallest. You see, the superlative 这里讲到最高级，所以都要立刻停留一下，慢慢的读。Mightiest means the tallest trees are native to North America, but big trees grow all over the globe from tropics to the boreal forest of the high altitudes. The trees need 3 things. Now, you see they need 3 things altogether, which is their growing condition. They have certain criteria that needs to be met so that they can grow really tall. The first, right place. The second, good growing conditions. And 3, lots of time with low adult mortality. Okay, so these were referring to the important criteria in order to grow into mighty tall trees. Now, if we were to get back to where we left not so long ago, go through all of these. First, How deforestation, we never talk about deforestation. Deforestation means cutting down trees, let go. How other plants can cause that. Which big trees support the most diverse? They did talk about diverse species, but when they mention about the tall trees, they never talk about a specific kind. So we didn't say which tall trees. No. Impact of the big trees loss. Nah. Measure of prevent further decline. We did not read any measures. We did not read any approaches or ways to prevent further decline. Number 6, how wildlife benefits from big trees. Now this look more reasonable when it goes to sustained, right? So it equal to the ideas to sustain. What do we have? And provide shelter for many animals. Okay, so that seems to be reasonable for us to assume that this is the likely answer. So I'm just going to write it down. Paragraph B. Paragraph B was to talk about how to grow into mighty tall trees. Those are risk from pests. Nah. Ways in which industry use blah. We never talk about any industry. How high temperature blah. Factors that enable trees to grow to significant heights. So again, we are getting it close to this part. Why? Because we literally read about it needs to go for 3 needs, 3 things tall trees grow mighty tall. Neat. Okay, so they would say 1, 2, and 3, right? So that was literally explained for itself. It says factors. So we have all of those 3 things as factors. They were 1, 2, 3. 1, what was it? Right place. 2, good growing condition. 3, lots of time with low mortality rate, right? So those are the factors. Now, if we were to move on to paragraph C as well as D, I'm going to write it down as X right down there. Erase. I'm not sure if you need this screenshots, but I think it's not necessary, but then I'll still take it. If you need any information about this or you need to write down as a note and you don't have that, because I might try to clear it or the further parts, it's in our meeting chat. Now, if we were to go back to C as well as D, I was trying to see if we could do C, D, E. If time is very limited, then I shall go do it faster. Right, so let's just try to do it this way for paragraph C, what it ever talks about right down there. And then for the arrows. In some parts of the world, population in big trees are dwindling. Dwindling in English, dwindling literally means the numbers are going down. Okay, so when we say that was an idea, I try to use this color. Okay, good. So they were saying populations of big trees decreasing. Okay, because their seedlings cannot survive or grow, because their young trees couldn't survive. And then they couldn't grow. Okay, so this particular paragraph is to tell us about the reason, perhaps, why those big trees babies cannot survive or they cannot grow. Okay, the first in South India, for instance, is aggressive non-native shrub called the Latana camara. Okay, so it's a non-native, it's an invasive alien species. Shrub means grass. And the grass, okay, let's just write it down like this way. A kind of grass. It's called Lantana camara, invading the floor for many forests. Okay, so that means Lantana camara took away the place. The original trees needs to make way for the alien species. Grows so thickly that young trees often fail to take roots because Lantana grow thickly, right? With no young trees to replace them, it's only a matter of time before most of the big trees disappear. Okay, no young trees to replace, and then big trees disappear. Across much northern Australia. Okay, so previously we were referring to the southern India, and now we are moving to northern Australia, different geographical lands. Gamba grass. Okay, so that's again a name of a kind of grass from Africa, is overrunning native savanna. Savanna means grassy field. Sorry, just allow me to make some marks. Woodlands. Okay, and then so the grass grow up 4 meters tall and burns fiercely. Okay, so gamba grass can grow really tall and it burns fiercely, creating super hot fires. Okay, so once it caught fire, it will burn to extremely high temperature. And that certainly is going to cause catastrophic tree mortality. So tree dies because of the fire. Now, if we were to talk about these, obviously we learned something, like whoever you're going to use the black one. The first was referring to the reason why those big trees are decreasing in number. First, non-native, remember, alien species called the gamba camera, the Lantana camera, and it sounds like camera. Number two is the gamba grass. So these were alien species invading. Alien species invading the habitat of the tall trees, the original tall trees. Moving on to D, without the right growing conditions, tree cannot get really big. So this paragraph is to explain for us the right growing conditions if they want to get really big. Evidence suggests that trees grow could slow in a warmer world. So what is it about grow slow? Slow in warmer condition, particularly in environments that are already warm. Having worked with decades of the Portoveget, how do we pronounce that? Portoveget de Vijo, I think it's J pronouncing H, something like that anyway. For Sarah Pickey, Costa Rica, David and Deborah Clark. Oh, that was the Clarks. Okay, Clarks are on paragraph D. Have shown that tree growth decline markedly in warmer. Okay, tree growth declines in warmer years. During the day, they're part of the census shut down when it goes to warm. Okay, gets too warm. Oh, do you read that all the paragraphs are talking about warmer climate, rate increase, and reptiles would have had to get its, okay, again, gets warmer. So all about it is a warmer climate, higher temperature, and warmer years, less energy becomes in survive, and there is even less energy available for. So paragraph D is all about warm temperature. Might be climates, might be to do with that. Now, moving on to paragraph E, the Clarks, the two Clarks, again, so the Clarks might be paragraph D or E. Hypothesis. Hypothesis is a theory. Okay, so they have a certain type of theory. Let's see what it was. And theory, if correct, means tropical forest will shrink over time. Shrink, getting smaller over time. The oldest trees would progressively die off. Oldest trees progressively die off and tend not to be replaced, not being replaced. So there aren't any young trees. According to the Clarks, that might trigger a destabilization. Okay, trigger destabilization of the climate. So it might influence our weather as older trees dies. Okay, so older trees die, forests could release. Were we not just talking about release in the sentence completion? Remember? Release stored carbon into the atmosphere, pumping a vicious cycle. So it's going to become a vicious cycle of further warming. And we knew not so long ago, warm weather is going to be lethal for trees to grow tall. So if those older trees die, will release carbon into the atmosphere. So it's like a global warming situation. And when the globe is getting warmer, trees slow down in their growth. So forest shrinkage and carbon emissions. All right, good. So forest shrinkage. Now, these were referring to without new trees. Old trees die and could die and let off toxic gas. I'll just put it that way because we will know about stored carbon, right? So the toxic carbon, and that would prevent further growing for trees. Okay, so prevent forests from developing. Developing. Okay, good. So that's exactly how we see it goes down there. I'll take a screenshot. I'm not sure if you need that, but I'll place that in our meeting chat. Clear everything, move on to the top for CDE. Now, what do you think might be a likely answer for C, D, and E? At the same time, we're just going to take away the answer we use. So not this one, not this one. So what's the possible answers if it is for paragraph C? Paragraph C was to talk about the gamba grass, about Lantana camara, right? So alien species. We did mention about how higher temperature, higher temperature. Higher temperature was just exactly the part we mentioned about paragraph D. So we could write it down. For paragraph D, warm is everything to do with it. So that was number 9. Okay. And if we were to talk about paragraph C, other plants, because other plants literally explain the 2 alien species, right? Other plants, meaning those grasses. Species like the gamba. And wow, what's the name of that? Lantana. Okay, good. Cause harm. So that literally explained to our answers down here. 2. How about number E, number 5 for the question? The last paragraph we read about. That was to refer to the 2 Clarks. Tropical forest shrink. And those really old trees died and they let off toxic carbon into the environment. And so that will cause our globe to be warmer. That certainly is to be related to the ideas of tree loss, the really mighty tree die, right? So big tree loss on the wider environment. So they mention about the wider environment is the tropical forest. So I should write this here. This one is going to be the answers for paragraph E4. What about the rest of the bit? I might need to write down some big tree loss. Wider environment. Write it down as tropical forest. Okay, and then bigger tree loss literally means those older trees die. They don't say exactly the same thing, but they will try to paraphrase that. You could see it very straightforward that they are not using exactly the same word. They try to rephrase. So we need to sharpen our skill for paraphrasing. Okay, paraphrasing is the very essential part. Paraphrasing is the very essential part for doing matching headings. Okay, so keep that in mind. We need to sharpen our skill. 我先讲一下废话，大概40秒。通常我们在做题目的时候，会看到很多同学对于 matching heading 这个题型，相对来说会认为很痛苦，或者是花费很多时间。也许不痛苦，但是可能做起来会觉得它是一个时间的杀手，就是会花费很多心神，但是不一定能够得到相对的回报，也就是答对的题数不一定如同自己一开始想的那么多。好，那特别注意一下下，在这种题型当中，题目基本上出现的 list of heading 不会用一样的字。如果有用到一样的字，跟文章里面一样的字，在选项里面都出现，那个答案有90%的几率是陷阱。再讲一次如果文章里面的出现的字，在选项里面全部都出现，或者是出现好几个，那这个时候这个答案很可能是陷阱所以一定要特别的留意跟小心。还有，如果我要去培养我在 paraphrase 的能力，我要怎么做？如果说我今天要去联想一个单字，它可以成为什么，或者是它可以用什么样的方式去记忆的单字，记忆单字的方法，我会建议有2种。第一种就是用 word bubble， 第二种就是用 word fork。就是它会让我们在记忆点上面会有一种眼睛视觉上面看到这个东西，所以能够联想起来。比如说我们今天给一个中心思想，然后我随便讲几个 results， 比如说我讲 results 好，然后我要同时之间去联想这个 results 可以换成谁，它可以被什么字取代，它同义替换的结构是什么？比如说我不要 results， 我可能比如说现在大家脑袋里面赶快去抓一些字，或者是抓一些可能的词，最少没有要能够抓出3个或是4个。所以我们刚刚在做题的时候，其实我们会看到他们一直都是应用这一类的方式在考验我们是不是能够把什么换成什么。而这个什么跟换成什么的速度就会影响我们答题的节奏。 比如说 results 我不要，我可以换成 outcome， 我可以换成 upshot。好，我可以换成 consequence， 但 consequence 因为我们在高中已经学过了，所以这个字我就不写出来啊。你可以换成高中、国中学过的 effect 啊，甚至是 reaction， 或者是你可以去，比如说 reaction， 好，也可以换成是一种 results， 一种结果，对不对？好，那如果这个结果通常是不好的，我们会说它有造成一个 aftermath。aftermath 就是得到一个相对令人失望的结局哦。当然没有，你可以用另外说，那 solution 可以 solution 啊，或者是你可以用它得到了一个ramification，从不同的字，但是它可以逻辑出来同样一个东西去想它。有的时候它就会变成是一个 word bubbles，用单字泡泡的方式去记。这个时候，你对于单纯一个叫做 results 的词，你可以联想出另外3个到5个。这个速度就会加快我们在 paraphrase 的时候换字的那个能量。So let's just get back to where we were. Now, we're going to move on to paragraph F and G. I'll take a screenshot, although I'm not sure if you really need this particular paragraph or this screenshot. So if we were to look at paragraph F and paragraph G, we might need to turn pages on that. So allow me to just scroll down for the last, and we are going to somehow be a bit of an awkward place to stay in the brink. Okay, so quickly look over F as well as G. Okay, the screenshot is already uploaded, so you will be able to see the answers. Now, if we're trying to stay around here for 1 minute silent reading. 好，我们来1分钟的速读。I'm just gonna be that spotlight, okay? And then you can just ignore me. Now, if apologize for any intrusion, but I need to say something at this moment. People with stronger sense of relate will be able to get the answer straight away from looking at these first top 3 sentences, because it talks about trees, clear for human use. So that would largely agree with the ideas of deforestation. So we could answer it straight away. So F 大概看前面这3个句子，直接回去第6题作答。就下面的就可以先不看，稍后等一下如果有考到相关这一段的问题，才再回来看这里。If in any way you might start to say fumble around, 假设我今天是刚开始接触的同学，我第一句跟第二句到第三句我都没有认出它有什么线索，那你继续找。So we literally is going through the part down there. They first talk about being logged, incredible rate, which means real fast, right? Rate means speed, pace, velocity. For example, the speed of a bullet. So that's why they say incredible rate. A speed of a bullet being, for example, someone being shot, and we knew it's going to happen fast. Logging again, timber cutters prioritize big and tall trees, mortality rate, bigger trees, clear the land. Again and again, they are saying and sharing the same concept. So we then can eventually get back to where we left not so long ago if we were to mention about the ideas. So we're just going to type the answer straight away for paragraph F. The answer is number 1. Because it was referred to the idea of deforestation harm isolated trees. Okay, and if we were to mention about those isolated trees means more, if we were to talk about those monocultures of fast-growing conifers. Okay, so those were very rare isolated trees, the conifers. 我们讲到其中有讲到针叶林，就是第一句话里面 isolated trees 这些离人居住的环境较为偏僻的这些特殊树种。So those monocultures of fast-growing conifers. Now, if we were to move on to paragraph G, right down here, particular enemies to large trees are insects and disease. Now, you could have started reading about this too. Insects and disease. They, for example, if they were to talk about the tiny creatures, they killed entire forests and then tunnel their way through the inside of the trees. Again, they were talking about the fungus causing disease. So first one of them were referring to the bark beetle. The second is the fungus. Okay, so resulting from human activity once gave beauty for killed off millions of stately trees. Stately means very tall. So that was referring to the concept of saying insects and disease. Now, if we were to go back directly to where we left not so long ago, it's a very straightforward answer. When we read through the first, that was talking about the ideas of the pests and the infection, okay? Because the bark beetle are pests. The fungus-related disease are infections. Okay, so that would largely agree with our ideas. Okay, so when we try to understand this part, let me just try to be brief for about 30 seconds. For beginners, it's easy if we just read the first two and the last two. 初学者要在这个题目答对一些基本分并不难，通常透过我们刚刚跟大家一开始分享的读头跟尾这两句，各两句，头尾各两句，千万不要只有读头一句尾一句。 头尾各2句才有基本的脉络。有的时候我们可能读第1句，第2句是 supporting ideas， 我们就可以猜答案。比如说第5题，比如说第6题和第7题，这就是属于初学者在这个题型当中达到他要的分数，答对的基本盘。如果我今天要进的是7分、7.5分、8分，我不能只有答对第6题和第7题，我必须要在其他的题型当中更增加我的得分率，所以我们的容错率在这个地方要下降，那就要靠刚刚我们在截图里面跟大家分享的转折语、最高级、第1步骤、第2步骤、第3步骤，或者是 in fact、in essence。Not only A, but also B 这些主要的句型，在文章的中间段落可以获得更多文章的语句，或者是写作的人他转换了说话的方式。他如果用了一个 but， 也就表示他前面所讲的都会被推翻，或者是他用了一个 however、nevertheless， 也就表示他前面所说的他已经改观。所以这个时候就不能只有透过头跟尾这2个句子。那 spare the rest of the talk now. We're moving back to the part where we left for sentence completion. While we do the sentence completion, there is something we need to pay attention to, right? No more than 2 words, and it's a sentence completion. Now, usually if we do the sentence completion, we have to look for the locating words. If we could remind ourselves for the possible locating words. Now, name it as 7 of them. 前几周我们都一直跟大家唠叨，定位字其实有12种，但我们基本常用的有7种，请问是哪7种？ If you could still remember from the previous part, for example, titles, right? Somebody's name or subtitles. Period of time, so we talk about dates and years. The third type of locating words, 第3种是什么？ Numbers or figures, right? So numbers or figures. What's number 4? Capitalize or italicize words or phrases, right? Phrases. What about number 5? Number 5 was referring to like technical or unusual words, right? What's number 6? Number 6 was referring to, for example, locations, cities, villages, and so on. Number 7, it was referring to the word that carries specific meaning, right? Allow me to introduce number 8. The first few words in the sentence. Number 9 would go for the word close to the blank space. 好，这其实有12种，但我们先讲常见的这几种，然后不要唠叨大家太久，但通常找定位字就是这几个。So if we were to look for the ideas down there, question number 8, what might be seem like a proper locating words, the biggest trees in the world. So the biggest trees in the world, the biggest trees can be found in. So we knew that was referring to a location. Remember previously, we were talking about locations as a noun. Okay, and we already knew that not so long ago because we finished that. Back to the part, if we want to talk about the really mighty talls are native to North America in paragraph B. So that's North America. And then they were to say about can be found. It was to say are native to. And then they didn't say the biggest trees. They say the mightiest. Very straightforward. Now, moving on to number 9, some trees in northern Australia. Again, it's about locations. For the locating words, northern Australia die because of the reason why they could not survive, made worse by gamba grass. Do you remember they were mentioned about the gamba grass? Gamba grass was referring to titles or subtitles or words that carry specific meaning, number 1 and number 7, right? So if that is going to be what we need to know is the answer is the byproduct of gamba grass. So we need to go back and find exactly what kind of situation or what kind of, say, impact gamba grass brought to northern Australia. I'll take a screenshot first. I'll share that later. We'll see how it goes, clear everything, get back to gamba grass, gamba, right down here. Gamba grass. And it was to do with northern Australia, which is question number 9. Overrunning native savanna woodlands, the grass grow up to 4 meters tall. So there is nothing caused by the grass so far, and burns fiercely, creating. So that's the byproduct of the grass. The grass will create the same thing as the question says, because of, right? If we were to put it down in this way. Question number 9. Tall tree die because of something made worse by gamba grass. Because of something made worse by gamba grass. Oh, sorry. Okay, let's look. Now, if we were to go for different arrows down there, we'll use the black. Made worse by gamba grass. So because it creates the gamba grass, okay, create super hot fires that cause, which is because of, right, the cause catastrophic tree mortality. So by gamba grass creating, and the tall trees die, gets down here, catastrophic tree mortality. Now, if we were to draw boxes of them, that refer to tall trees die. And then because of, that goes to the part where we will be able to see it from here, the cause. All right, so that was super hot fires. And down here they say no more than 2 words. So we write it as, can I write super hot fires here? Yeah, because super hot is with a hyphen, which accounted for 1 word. So then I can naturally put it down as the answers here. So super hot fires. All right, if you would like to describe the fire, please make sure you use it. I probably need to write it in the color of blue as well, so we could get it. Now, just to spare for a quick talk, the last time there was a student from Indonesia, and she was explaining to me that she wants to know why she will be deducted one of the points in the reading part. The particular question was to ask the students to write down 2 words, no more than 2 words. And so the question for her, she tried to write down as rooms, ROOMS. And she thought that writing 1 word is still under the limit of no more than 2 words. So she sent the answer, but then the answer came to be empty rooms. So she tried to request for an explanation from the examiner. So the examiner told her, it's very different if you say rooms and empty rooms. Empty is a critical adjective to describe the situation of those rooms. So you need to write down empty rooms. Same thing here. If you write down fires, that might not be efficient or sufficient enough for the examiners because super hot is critical adjective. It talks about the temperature of the fire gets extremely high. So this adjective is necessary. The next time, if you read any questions as no more than 2 words, better find 2 words as a proper fit. Now, if we're getting down to question number 10, they were saying the clerks. So what happened to the clerks? Believe that the release of something from dead trees means old trees, right? We just finished this paragraph because we are doing the list of heading from question 1 to question 7. So we knew what kind of thing was down here. That was carbon. Remember? The idea is down there. Recall from our memory, it wouldn't take long from the dead trees. The release of something from the dead trees. Getting down to the dead trees, meaning older trees die. The release the carbon. So we're going to use a different color. The store carbon. Okay, so we'll just square that one out straight away. You could write down stored carbon as I would like to advise here. 好，如果我们想要避免刚刚我讲到的那个同学的那种情况的话，那这个时候我们必须要使用的就可以是2个字的，不要超出，也不要用只有 carbon 这个词。我会建议在未确定考官的态度的状况之下，我们采取最保守的做法，就是他既然说2个字，我就尽量找2个字来满足他。避免如果我今天只写1个字，但是他回给我的时候，他说这个形容词是一个 critical adjective， 那我没有回答到，就表示他在拒绝我只有1个字的答案，所以就不要出现刚刚我讲过 empty rooms 跟 rooms 之间的这种被扣分的现象，所以我们满足他的条件2字 ，right? Such as a screenshot. I'm not sure if you need them, but I'll keep that in the meeting chat. If you have any inquiries, you could write it down in our meeting chat and I shall attend to it. I shall be around and attend to it later. Now, if we were to get to question 11, 12, and 13, what time is it? 3:04. Question 11, 12, 13. Strong something are capable of damaging tall trees in the Amazon. Well, we just finished the parts of the Amazon, so it should be something like the very strong. We read about the strong can snap the trees into half. That was in paragraph F. Let's go for paragraph F. What's the line about? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Okay, 9, 10, and 11. 9 to 11. Because that's the place where they mention about the Amazon. I know something strong there. R, so we're looking for a plural form. Damaging tall trees in Amazon. So get back to where we left. This is exactly the parts previously we done with the Amazon. We're done with the Amazon. Okay, give me a second. So to this part, just look for the ideas where they say, when winds blow across the surrounding clear land, there is nothing to stop the acceleration, which means it's very powerful. Okay, so this literally explains to the ideas of powerful for question number 11, strong, Q11. It's not explaining by its words. They didn't just say strong straight away. No, they try to explain that by giving the strong, nothing to stop their acceleration. Now, we are going to think about an idea now here is who are there? And what can account for the subject of they? All of these will lead back to the winds. So there means the winds. They means the winds. Now, if we were to get back to this particular range, read on. They, which means winds, hit the trees. An impact can snap them. Them again is the tree. Okay, so they had literally trying to manipulate between different subjects. 这个地方我们跟大家稍微分享一下，讲一下快速的废话，大概30秒。各位在这个地方你会看到它出现的题型是一个东西叫做远端代名词。远端代名词的一个陷阱就是当它出现在另外一句或者是新开一句的时候，我们很长时间会忘记它到底代表谁。各位可以看一下这个地方，首先他讲风的时候，他说 winds， 接下来的 no nothing to stop them 的 them 也是风。When they hit the tree， 当这些风冲击到树木的时候 ，the impact can snap them， 这个强大的力量会将它们拦腰折断 ，snap in half。这个它们又是一个代名词了。那这个地方就变成，那我回溯到东西去的时候，我要连到谁？所以它必须要很接近的一个逻辑，我们要很清楚的掌握它到底代表谁。这个 them 就是这些 trees。好，然后这个前一句的 there 以及下一个 they 都回溯到上一个句子的 winds。所以第11题的答案，我知道我要找的是一个复数型。So strong something are capable of them are capable of damaging tall trees in the Amazon. Okay, so that was referring to the winds. Each one of them, when they say damaging them, means snap them in half. Okay, so we're just going to do this. Tall trees means them. Snap in half. 拦腰折断哦，都是回归到 damaging 这个概念词哦。虽然它有在中间放上了一个，因为它是 separable，就是它是一个可分割的动词片语。我们在国中的时候学过 separable 跟 inseparable， 可分割跟不可分割，这个是可分割，所以你在读的时候你就把中间的 them 拿掉就可以。Right, so doing this way, number 12. 12 was referring to something has a worse impact on tall trees than smaller ones. So tall trees, taller and smaller. This is the point where we read about them, right? Smaller trees and taller trees. I need to know what was that. Something has a worse impact. Than in smaller ones. So this one literally means smaller one, the bigger trees meaning the tall trees. So what I need to look for is something, which is a singular noun, has a worse impact. Second rainforest fragment dry out when surrounded by dry, hot pasture and the resulting drought. Drought means a very long spell of time without rain, right? So drought can have devastating consequences, which means the worst impact. Now, allow me to just devastating consequences, referring to worst impact. Death rate will double. So that was referring to the drought. Drought, which is a singular noun, right, has a worse impact because they say have devastating consequences. Okay, so this one is explained. This is the answer up here, drought. Right, moving on to question 13. They are from a top-down system, so it should be not far away from it. West Northern America, which is for question number 13. West Northern America here. Western North America. Species of something destroy many trees. Species, so a kind of animal or a kind of plants, right? Causing massive outbreak. Bark beetle. Okay, the bark beetle should be the answer because it was referring to causing big trees. Destroy many big trees. Western North America. Something, a species of. Bark beetle. Destroy many trees. Wild murderous accurate outbreak of bark beetles. These tiny creatures kill entire forest as a tunnel way through in the trees. So that one agree with this. Kill, destroy many trees about the forest. A species of. So we can say there was a tiny creature, right? Give us an idea to it. Screenshot taken. Now we're moving on to the following passage. If you have any questions and inquiry, please write it down in our meeting chat. I shall be around. I might not have sufficient time to attend to every single of those questions, but I'll see what I could do. Now we're moving on to the second part of the reading, was referring to the stranding of the whales. Stranding of the whales, look at the title as well as the subtitle to it. So they say, why do whales leave the ocean and become stuck on beaches? That certainly is not something out of their own will. So add to this particular type of questions. We'll see how what they have. The first type we have are passages for each answer. So these were short answers. For the short answer, and it's relatively easy and handy for us to do because they will go for a top-down system. Okay, so they are in general in orders, which means they are sequential questions. As long as you follow a top-down system, sequential. Something down here. I'm just going to do number 14 because I need to pay more attention to the diagram. 上面14到17我只讲14，因为第18到第21比较难。那简答题我们刚刚讲过了，它是一个顺向出题的字，我一样找那刚刚那9个定位字，在截图里面大家可以看到那9个定位字里面可能出现。Number 14, research often take from the bodies of whales. Take from the bodies of whales. So researchers take something. We will not explain every question for 15, 16, and 17, but we will divulge the answer. 15到17不会细讲，也不会画箭头，但是会约略的描述它的位置跟它的大概的一个脉络。Okay, so I will explain some very capricious sentence formation, but we will not go for the detail. So question 15 was referring to what do some industries and shipping. Okay, so the locating words were industry as well as shipping. Create that are harmful to whales. So we need to know for industries and shipping company. 16, which geographical region? So that certainly is going to be the name of a location. Most whales stranding in Australian happen. Okay, so that was referring to a location. And that was about something created. Question number 15 is about something created by the shipping company and the industry. 17, what kind of whale? So we need to know about the name, the species, the particular kind, the subject of a study in the North Sea. So find the North Sea, which is easy and very straightforward. Now, if we were to get back to this particular point, first the question, 14, from a top-down system. So we need to know about the researchers. 5 more minutes. Skin samples. Question number 14. Collecting skin samples. because that was referring to researchers, because they want to study, so they investigate. And the thing they take from the body of the whales were the skin samples. How many words is the limit? No more than 2 words. So skin samples. This is question 14. Now, industry and shipping, creating something that would be harmful for the whales. Industry for shipping and so previously we were here. So then we should move on and find shipping and industry. Noise pollution from offshore industry and shipping. So what do they create? Noise pollution. And sonar can impair underwater communication. Okay, so at least they were creating noise pollution. 2 words, so noise pollution for question 15. As for 16, geographical feature, most whale stranding in Australia happen. In Australia, most stranding. This is question 15, okay? You will have to write it down as you wish, and then we'll sit for number 16. Mass whale stranding, 4 or more animals, typical stranding, and the whale don't start at the group. They are scattered over a large area. So we need to know about the location for question 16, Australia. This is Atlantic, nothing to do with these. They were trying to explain for the reasons. Yeah. Now, so we're moving down here. NATO admitted there were mass strandings, typically mass strandings, getting down to the parts where nowhere to be found for Australia. So we'll keep looking. Stranding star sonar situations in normal. Say here. Oh, here. Australian whale stranding occurred around Tasmania, and then say 80%. So the answer for question 17 is Tasmania. 16. Right. And we need any further for question 17. Kind of whale was the subject of a study in North Sea. So we need to look for the ideas for North Sea. Perth, Australia. Somewhere related to it. Suggest that it changes. So what kind of whale was it studied? The major topic for their study. We analyzed data, observing periodic for the number of whales stranded in Asia, and put as marshes as years of studies. So it was to talk about sperm whale. Sperm whale was the ideas for question 17. It's about time. So we're pretty much done with it. We'll see how it goes in the further part to explain diagram, okay? Because I literally have something that I would like to share as a file, but then we don't have the additional time for this. Okay, good. Just to remember, when you do the diagrams, they are indefinite question. 好，我大概讲废话10秒钟就好。我们今天没有办法有多余的时间讲完下面的图表，但是各位请注意，在做图表的时候，它属于不定题型，所以它有可能是顺的，也有可能是乱的。当我们在做18、19、20、21的时候，请特别留意哦。我们等一下会在第一个部分先做完的，第一题做完的是第20题，第20题读怎样？第18题，第18题是第一个做完，可是呢，第二个做完的不是第19题，第二个做完的是第20题。I don't know, I have to do it like a reshuffle thing. 1, 2, 3, 3 and 4. 好，我再重讲一次哦。当我们在做 diagram 的时候，它属于不定题型，也就是它有可能顺的，也有可能乱的，它也有一种可能是前2题是顺的，后2题是乱的。所以当我们在做这种题目的时候，必须以题目当中提供的关键字为主。比如说21题讲到 sonar， 那我们刚刚就有读到，所以就立刻回去找。第20题可能出现 storm， 第19题可能出现 South Australian coasts， 那第18题的定位字大概就是 shallow beaches 浅滩，以定位字的方式去找，不能够八股的认定它一定是18找到再找19， 19找到再找20，再出现21。下面的答题顺序大家可以看得到，它完全是一个颠覆。所以做这一类题型，请注意它是不定题型，不定题型。diagram 通常它的范围会很大，范围会很大，这是在文章当中找到答案的范围是比较大范围的，有可能3段，像这里的话4题可能就是分别出现在不同的4个段落，所以这种题型一定要花上比较多的时间。注意题目里面给予的关键字，包括我们刚刚列出的那9大关键词。Right, so thanks for coming today. I'll withdraw from the desktop sharing mode. I shall be seeing you on next Thursday, and we're moving on to week 10. 好，我们下周会进入第10周。All right, so thanks for coming. Ciao, bye bye.